Start spreading the news.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.
Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer! Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James! LeBron James with the rejection. Puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron, and we are brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek, your number one place for all your ticket needs. Use promo code Off the Ball Network, all caps, to get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com or download the app. Got a special show for you guys today. A first timer on the Off the Ball podcast. Someone I've been following a lot on Facebook, and I just was like, all right, I got to get him on the pod. And appreciate him coming on the pod, and we're going to talk all things Pels and in the NBA. David Grubb, he covers the Pelicans. Dave, what's good, my guy?
I'm so glad to be with you, man. Definitely been a mutual admirer of your work as well. So glad to talk some hoops with you today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So tell the people a little bit about yourself, because you are a first timer on the pod. So tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you do, and just about, your love for the game of basketball.
Yeah, I've been in broadcasting now for almost 25 years, and started off in television, working in North Carolina and small towns in Louisiana. Eventually made my way up to Springfield, Mass, and got to work in the home of the Basketball Hall of Fame for a while. And hoops has always been my first love. Like a lot of people, obviously I played in high school, but I always thought more like a coach. My coach said, if you could play like you think the game, you'd be great. I could not play it like I thought it. My dreams of playing. I played. We had one of those teams in college. I went to Wake Forest University during the Tim Duncan era, so that'll give you a hint as my age. Tim and I were classmates. But I competed. Our women's team, like a lot of women's teams at the D1 level, have men who practice with them. I was part of that. And worked in the summers as a coach and did all those things. And I've just been around the game. Got into it as a broadcaster. And over the last 25 years, I've done it all, whether it's been television, radio, podcasting, and then writing as well. I own the website, thebirdwrites.com, where we cover the Pelicans, and also my podcast, The Bird Calls, and Hard to Paint with David Grubb as well. So, there's a lot of places folks who check me out. I've had some great conversations with some of the players who have shaped this league, and then just love covering the game as it continues to evolve on every level. Also do a color commentary for Tulane men's basketball here in New Orleans. Been doing that with ESPN Plus for the last 4 years as well. So
that's awesome.
It's rare when you are not a coach to get one of those gigs. So I take that as a real sign of respect that the university has given me that opportunity to talk basketball for the last 4 years.
So have you always been, because obviously the Pelicans are kind of fairly new in the grand scheme of it, was it always, rooting for, they were the Hornets sort of, or was it any other team?
I started off as a Knicks fan. I was, when I became of age, like a lot of kids in the early 80s, Georgetown was, hyper prevalent. They were on TV all the time. And I fell in love with Patrick Ewing. I wanted Patrick Ewing. I wanted to be him. I wanted to grow up to be 7 foot tall. Mm-hmm. I wanted to block every shot that I saw. And when Patrick got drafted by the Knicks, I was like, that's my team. Wherever he goes, that's my team. And so, the Knicks were my first love. And when you grew up in the Jordan era, when he's ascending, all your friends are wearing Bulls jerseys, and you got on your Ewing jersey, your Starks gear. You know what I'm saying? You rocking your blue and orange every day. It makes you an outcast. But I embraced it, and it kind of, I guess, it made me be resolute in my opinions. You better be able to back your stuff up, and so you just
100%.
kind of you get better at arguing with people on the bus with your teammates and telling them why the Knicks are better than the Bulls
Yeah,
and all those things. So they were my team, I think it's harder as you become a journalist to be just a fan of your team because it
100%.
does skewer the way you look at the game, and you have to be more objective in certain cases. But I love the game of basketball and always will, and there's always going to be the softest spot in my heart for the Knicks.
Yeah, and it's crazy because growing up, you kind of want to be a Jordan or a Bulls fan because I'm born in '89, so the '90s was like the golden era for me. But I used to spend a lot of time in the Bronx with my cousin, and I used to be like, yo, I'm gonna rock with Jordan, the Bulls, or Grant Hill. I loved Grant Hill too. Like Grant Hill was so like what he could do on the court, and they were like, absolutely not. It's like you are going to be a Knicks fan. We're going to teach you why you should be a Knicks. Because and it was like, okay, they made the playoffs every year in the '90s, right? I think they're one of the few teams or the only team to make the playoffs every year in the '90s. So it's like, all right, this should be fun, right? I think I picked the right team.
It's a lifetime of misery.
Little did I know,
it's a lifetime of misery.
School, I was like, oh man, this is bad. It was crazy. I used to go. I remember one game in particular. It was me and my buddies after school. We hyped. We're going to the Knicks game. We after school. I think we even left early. We did. We go. I think this is when they got Zebo and they had that team. I think Marbury. They had that team.
Jerome James.
Yeah, I think Jerome, Eddie Curry. I don't even know if Eddie Curry was there yet, but whatever. Like we had that team, and we went to the game. We hyped, and I think we lost by like 40. No joke. And we're just like, is this going to be like normal? And unfortunately, it became the new normal and became just bad and bad. And I was like, oh, like there was. I mean, the dark years, and then like I remember 2018 being like, because that's when I started podcasting. That took me off because I need to speak about this. I don't know if people care, right, but I need to speak about that off season. That summer 18 was, I think, the worst off season I'm a Giants fan, Yankees fan. Giants have been really bad, but like I've had some bad off season. Not much the Yankees, but like I've had some rough off. But that was like, oh my, like should I just stop? Do I stop being a fan? It was that bad, But then. It got better, thankfully, and now it is 10 times better. But being a Knicks fan it's been a roller coaster, David. It's been
let me ask you real quick then, because I've been around, like I said, and I love the older Knicks too. I went back and I studied certainly the guys in the '70s as well, and how great those teams were. And I was fortunate enough to get to meet Willis Reed and some stuff like that over the course of my life. But if you had your Knicks starting five, like of all the Knicks, and you had to have seen them, you know what I'm saying? Like I think that's the rule, because that makes it more fair. I think we all are biased to the players that we see and love, and I think that's fair. But what would your starting five be of the Knicks since 1989?
All right, I guess I'm gonna go Jalen at the one. I'm gonna go right. Go Allen Houston at the 2. Let's go Melo at the 3. Man, the 4 is tough. Because we got LJ, but it wasn't Grandmama LJ, but it was still a good version. Amari, even Jew. I got to give respect to Jew. I'm gonna go Amari, because even for that first year, like that was a fun first year, even if we only got one good year out of Amari. And then at center, I'm going with Pat. Yeah, we're gonna go with Pat.
So mine at point, I'm going Steph, because Steph is just my dude. Like I love Stephon Marbury.
Steph is the reason why I wanted to go to Lincoln High School. Like Steph is the reason. Him and Sebastian Telfair were the reason why I wanted to go to Lincoln High School. I didn't get to go. Family members went, but I didn't. But it was a dream of mine. I always go to Lincoln because of them too.
I will fight with people over Stephon Marbury. Hey, it's like that. And John Starks. Like I will never get over Game 7 against the Rockets. I had my friends come and pick me up because I was at my house. I was the only Knicks fan again, so I was crying at my house during Game 7, just dying. And they came pick me up and took me bowling to distract me from what
Thank
was
God
going on in
I
Houston.
think I was 4 or 5. Like, so I didn't
I still blame OJ for that. I still blame OJ for that. If OJ doesn't do what he does, the Knicks win the championship.
Yeah, you're
I
right. You're
firmly
right. You're
believe
right.
that.
You're right.
So I put Starks at the 2, Melo at the 3, and again, I'm showing my age, but I can't break up Oak and Pat at the 4-5. So I got to have my enforcer to go along with Pat, and then my 6th man just to throw him in is Anthony Mason. I miss Mace, and
Yeah.
the dude was just one of the defining. Now, when you look at it, a prototype of those big ball handling small forwards.
Oh, you can't go wrong with that, man. Masons. These reasons why I got that haircut when I had hair. When I was younger,
Every week, you know what I'm saying? You're like, Nate, how do you
man.
do that, bro? Every
Yeah,
week you get a
every
new one?
week. That was man. He definitely was that dude, man. Just a tough as nails. Those Knicks teams were fun, but let's get into it with the Pelicans. And obviously, you win the game last night, right? But it comes with some unfortunate news that Dejounte Murray in the fourth quarter, who's having, I think he was like 18 and 8. I think it was almost a triple double. He almost had like 18, 10 and 8. Like he was having a really good game, and it felt like a really good move to get him because he's going to play the natural point where when he was in Atlanta, him and Trey, I always didn't understand that move. I just felt like it just never was going to work, and it didn't work, and it felt like watching the game yesterday. I'll go, okay, this looks good, and then he breaks his hand. And obviously, covering the team, this team has been dealt with a lot of injury bugs, especially with the guy you took in 2019 with the number 1 pick in Zion. So what's the mood right now after finding out Dejounte is going to be out for it could be months, with the fractured hand?
It's frustrating. I think that's where Pelicans fans are. They're frustrated because, again, last night was such a high as far as watching the game because you went into it and you're like, oh, Zion's not playing because he was out sick. You're just thinking about Trey is on the sidelines with his hamstring. So you're down 2, for all intents and purposes, starters in the opening night. And you're about to go on a 4-game road trip. So you know how important that game is. And Pelicans pulled away in the second half. Were looking really good, doing the things that Willie Green said that they were supposed to do. Getting up and down the court, creating turnovers. They had found this rookie in Yves Missi, who had come off the bench. It just gave you everything that he had, and so it looks like everything's falling into place. And I did the post game. We did all this stuff. Nobody knew. It wasn't discussed after the game. Nobody knew. And then you get home. By the time I get home, then I see this alert that Dejounte Murray may have broke his hand. And you could just see your timeline just filling up with people like, not again. Not again. You hadn't even seen the Pelicans starting 5 on the floor together. You didn't see them in the preseason because Zion and BI never played at the same time during the preseason. The Pelicans only had 3 preseason games. And then to lose Dejounte, who is the only true point guard you have on this roster and is such a defensive linchpin as well for this team, the way that they expect him to play, to lose him up until maybe Christmas, if not longer, that's a huge blow for a team in the Western Conference where you can't afford to give away any games. And every night is going to be a hammer and a gauntlet to go through. And so now you're losing one of your 3 best players before you even can get out of the gate.
Yeah, that's tough. And like I said, you're dealing with, Trey Murphy being out, with the hammy, and then Zion obviously being out. So it's a tough blow. But let's kind of backtrack. Obviously, game 1 was yesterday, but let's just go, the off season and just the feeling around this team, because it feels like there was a lot of uncertainty, especially with Brandon Ingram. He wanted a contract extension, doesn't get that. Trade rumors with that, handling the big man situation. So, what was the kind of the feel for in the off season from this team heading into this season?
I think the team is very optimistic. It's the fan base and the media are a lot more skeptical. Because look, you're year 6 with Zion Williamson. You're going into year 6 and you've never won a playoff series. You've only qualified for the playoff twice, and both times you were the 8th seed. So the Pelicans have not gotten to that point. Look, we know in the NBA, nobody lower than a 3 seed has won the championship in the last 30 years. Like, I think you have to go back to the Houston Rockets, when they won their second title. You have to go all the way back to the Rockets, and that's what, 94, 95? So we're talking 30 years you got to go back for a team lower than a 3 seed, and the only 3 seed was the Warriors 2 years ago when they won it over Boston. So this is a league where home court advantage matters. And so the Pelicans, while they've gone from 30 wins in Zion's first year to 49 last year, it still doesn't seem like you've made a lot of progress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they were 10th his first year. Well, you're 8th now. So how far have you really come? Because it's all relative. Wins and losses ultimately don't matter. It's your position in the standings. So everybody got better in the West. So I think for the Pelicans fans, you're always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something bad to happen. And I think the BI concerns about whether or not he's going to be traded, whether or not he's going to get an extension. Same with CJ McCollum. And it just feels like you're trying to figure out where this team is on its timeline, because that's how this whole league operates now. The windows are no longer 5 to 7 years. You're talking about 2 or 3 with your group of players, your core group of players, and then you have to decide, are we rebuilding or are we throwing more tax money at an expensive lineup? That's every team in the league is facing those decisions. So for the Pelicans, they've reached that critical mass kind of with all these contracts converging at the same time, and they got decisions to make. So this year, I think every franchise goes into a year and says, this is the most critical year in franchise history. Well, the Pelicans have been perpetually living on that in real time since Zion Williamson got there. Because I think, on the one hand, Zion is not going to be one of these guys that plays 20 years. All right. Physically, that's just not going to happen. And his game is not going to age well when he gets to 35. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to, at 6'5" at the power forward position, it's not going to be pretty at age 35. So I think you got to get him in these first 10 years, and you're already at year 6.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? You're already at year 6 with Zion. Like it feels like it was yesterday. We were, doing the lottery and seeing who's gonna get them one pick, and now we're in year 6 of Zion, and it's like, oh man, like he's closer to year 10 than he is year 1, and that's my next thing is obviously Zion. He's such a polarizing figure. He's such an exciting player when he plays, but Dave, we know he just doesn't play a lot. Now last year he played 70 games, but playoff time, what happens? He gets hurt, and that just deflates everything, and obviously you don't advance. So, what is the feeling around Zion right now? Because obviously the first, when you win the lottery, it's like, whoa, this is our guy. Like this could be the true face of the franchise. And now year 6, and it's like when he plays, we're a top 3 team in the West, and it's like, but he doesn't play enough. So like, what's the feeling with, whether it's front office or with the fans, like with Zion, like, is it still like, all right, like you play, we're good, but it's like, man, you don't play enough. Like, what do we do next if it's another season where he's playing less than 50 games?
I think, these are the calculated risks you have to take in the NBA. And it's kind of almost, you hate to see it at the age of 25, but it's almost like a Joel Embiid situation for Zion Williamson. It's very similar. And people have compared their careers kind of throughout, just the number of games missed and all these things that Joel had the early part of his career. And also the fact that, too, Joel being a number 1 pick who has never gotten past the second round of the playoffs himself. Yeah. So when you look at these kind of things and you take Zion, and I think fans love Zion. There's no doubt that they love him. And you also know when you are in a smaller market, it's rare when you're going to get this type of player in your franchise, playing for your franchise. So you've got to maximize that. So I think it's really hard for Pelicans fans because you're living under this, you've had this before. You've had Anthony Davis, you've had Chris Paul, these guys who were first team All NBA MVP caliber talents, and you couldn't capitalize on it when they were at their peak. And I think that's the tough thing for David Griffin is that he's done a poor job at times in team building and giving you the right kind of squad to complement what Zion does well. I view Zion Williamson a lot like Allen Iverson. And I think you have to build a very specific team to be successful for Zion Williamson the same way you did for Allen Iverson. Yeah. Everybody else has to play off of what he does. And you can thrive in that role, but you need to understand that this guy is the catalyst and we have to act off of what he does. And I think that there's been this push and pull because the Pelicans have tried to hedge their bets. And that's been the Brandon Ingram conundrum is like, They thought that they maybe had a second franchise level player in BI, so they never wanted to disenchant him. And they kind of pushed him forward in those times when Zion wasn't around and said, do you want to seize this role as franchise player? Brandon has shown you that he is a very good player, but he is not a first team all NBA player. And to win a championship, you got to have a first team all NBA player. So I think that, as a Pelicans fan, you have to kind of hope if it doesn't happen with Zion, it's not going to happen with anybody else on this roster. You have some very talented players, but you've got one guy who can be the best player in multiple playoff series. And that's what it takes to win in the NBA. You better have somebody who's the best player on the floor for at least 2 or 3 of these series in the postseason. Otherwise, you can't win a title. And that's what you see in Zion. But it's like, yeah, if you never play in the playoffs, which he has not. He said those 2 Pelicans playoff runs, he wasn't there for them. Yeah. So, yeah, they need him on the floor, and we all need to see what he's capable of in the postseason. But, I you know how it goes. You cannot give up that guy till you find out. Like, if he gets to the playoffs and it doesn't work, okay, maybe we start talking about, hey, it's not going to work here. But I'm going to give that man every bit of rope to prove me wrong.
And you kind of answered my next question. That was gonna be my next thing, was like, when do you know if this is time to maybe go a different direction? And I think that is fair to say, okay, let's see if he can make it to the playoffs. If we are a playoff team and he's playing, let's see what he does in the playoffs. Because, like I said, we go through all these injuries, but if he balls out in the playoffs, then maybe all this stuff maybe be worth it, all the wait. But, but let's play devil's advocate. What if it's a repeat? What if he plays, like we said, last year, played 70 games, and I had him as an all-NBA third teamer. I thought he was just that good. But what if it's the same case? What if it's a case where he doesn't play in the playoffs again? Do you kind of maybe think about, is there that thought, or is it all right, year 7, let's see if this happens again. Let's see if we if we can get him healthy, and then, see if we can get him in the playoffs and see what happens. But it's like, all right, that'll be 7 years and he hasn't played a playoff game. And the NBA, that's a long time to not be in a playoff team, playing the playoffs.
I mean, I think when you're New Orleans, you're trying to balance everything, because you are in a stadium situation where the Smoothie King Center is one of the older arenas in the league, and they want to keep it full while they figure this thing out.
Small market team, you get that. I get that 100%.
They just opened, the Pelicans just started their own TV network that is going to broadcast throughout Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. So again, you want those ratings up. Zion Williamson brings ratings. So those are things that are under consideration. And you have him under contract for the next, 4 years. So, this is the first year of his extension. So you have their core. They figured out who their core is. It's Zion. For the next 3 years, you've got Zion, you've got Trey Murphy, you've got Herbert Jones, and you've got Dejounte Murray, all under contract. That's the core that they've decided on. Everybody else is going to get moved around as necessary to try to make this core work. So I think they're committed with Zion through year 10. I think that's unless something dramatic happens, and he, I think he would have to ask to leave. That would be the only way. They're not going to send him away. But I think they're committed to Zion through year 10.
Yeah, so I'm saying I root for Zion because I'm a Blue Devils fan. I'm a Blue Devils fan, so I root for all my Dukies, him and Bi. But I root for Zion I want to see the best players play at the highest level. I think as a basketball fan, I think any basketball fan wants to see that with Zion. We want to see him healthy, and we want to see what he does in the playoffs. And it's like, all right, we thought we were gonna get it last year, didn't happen. So we're hoping, I know he was just out just for an illness, and hopefully he's okay with that. But let's talk about some of the younger guys, and one guy in particular, Yves Missi. He was someone that very intriguing, someone I thought maybe the Knicks could grab up. You guys got in front of us and nabbed him. But his role on this team, because obviously you guys are not a very big team. No more Giannis Valanciunas, and so you guys, you don't have a lot of size on this team at all. But he played yesterday, solid showing. Had some nice blocks. I think he had 3-4 blocks, so nice showing. So what's his role? Because he's kind of going to be forced to play maybe more minutes than maybe anticipated. But, yesterday, I know it's just one game and it's just the Chicago Bulls, but that was a solid showing for his first, professional basketball, real basketball game. So what do you feel about his potential contribution to this team, knowing that you guys don't have a lot of size on this team?
I mean, this is a team that only has 2 players in its top 12 who are taller than 6'10". And one of them will not play at all, pretty much. That's Carlo Makovic, who only played in garbage minutes yesterday. So, yeah, when you look at Yves, what he brings to the table is verticality. Like, he's the only person that you have to defend vertically. He's the only person who on defense can play vertically. And you saw that he was everywhere when he was on the court. 12 points, 7 boards, 3 blocks, a steal, a couple of assists. Like, he did a little bit of everything. And as a rookie, look, he doesn't have to shoot. Like, people keep saying, like, oh, the Pelicans need to find a Miles Turner type big. You don't need that. You got 4 guys who can score 20 who are sitting around there. 5 if you count Trey Murphy, who's certainly capable of scoring 20. So you got 5 guys who can put up 20 on any given night. You just need your big man to be big. If you can rebound, you can block shots, you can roll. And he's already talked about building, I think, again, this is where that Dejounte Murray injury hurts, is because they were developing good chemistry. Last night, he hit him with a couple of lobs, got him in a pick and roll more than once. So it's just, they already are building the chemistry. But all he has to do is be big. And quite frankly, I mean, when they drafted Jackson Hayes a few years ago, that's what they wanted Jackson to do. But Jackson was unwilling to do the dirty work. Yves does not look like he's unwilling to do the dirty work. So in my mind, he should be the starter at the 5 if you're going to play. If it's either the choice is between Daniel Tice, who is fine, and as a veteran, okay, great. But Daniel Tice is 6'8". Give me the 7'1". And if he fouls out, he fouls out. I wasn't planning on playing him 25 minutes a night anyway. But if you give me 15 minutes of activity and height, I think that helps this team immensely, because they're going to go up against a lot of talented big men on a night-to-night basis across this league. And you need this kid to play well.
100%. And like I said, he was someone that I liked a lot coming out of Baylor, and I think he fits perfect with you guys. It's exactly what you need, with the loss around Tunison. But now, like you said, him and Dejounte looked like they were getting there was some chemistry there, and like I said, some nice lobs and all. But now Dejounte's out. How do you what do you feel like is going to be the lineup going forward? Are we going to have CJ more at the point? The Jordan Hawkins, obviously, you drafted a few years ago, can shoot. Does he slide into the 2? So what is that? What do you feel like the lineup going forward is going to look like?
Yeah, I think this is going to be on CJ to take over the point guard duties. I know a lot of people think that, you could slide Jose Alvarado into the starting lineup, and I just don't think you can. Jose is best in a reserve role. And because, when you in this league, if you're a smaller guard, and the Knicks have an exceptional smaller guard, but you better be able to do 2 things as a small guard. And that's be strong. Like you got to play bigger than your size if you're a smaller guard, and you've got to score consistently. And Jose is not a consistent scorer. He can get hot. There's certainly nights when Jose can get hot, but in that starting lineup, they're going to need those points from that position. So I think if you're going to play this group and I would start Missi at center. I'd have CJ at the point. Put Jordan at the 2 and go with Herb at the 3 and Brandon at the 4. That to me is the lineup in the short term that works. If it proves that it can't play, but then so be it, you make an adjustment. But in the short term, I'd go with that group, because the starts are so important for this team offensively. If you're going to play with tempo, if you're going to get threes up the way Willie Green wants them to average 40 threes a game this season, then you've got to put your shooters in from the start and let CJ run that offense as best you can. You may have to go through Brandon a bit more. You may have to go through Herb a bit more. That's fine. So CJ is not always on the ball. But, this is what they're going to have to do. They've got to be able to be threats from the outside to make this work at all.
Dave, who's obviously we know the important players. We know Dejounte, is an important player, especially when he gets back. I mean, maybe beginning of the year or end of the year. Zion, how important he is. CJ is important, but who's someone who's kind of going to be the X factor for this team?
It's always Herb Jones. It is always Herb Jones. If you look at every 2-man, 3-man, 4-man, 5-man lineup, the best ones all have Herb Jones in them. And it's because he makes everybody's life easier. And the question this year for Herb, a guy who's the only perimeter player to make the first team all defensive team last year, and should be a contender for defensive player of the year every year. The thing for Herb is you're asking a dude who's 6'7", 185 pounds to guard 4s and 5s a lot more. And I think that, we've already seen Dejounte go down with injury. My biggest fear is that Herb Jones misses a couple games here, a couple games there with those nagging type injuries that come from banging against bigger players. When you get those hip pointers, or you get a hyperextended finger, or you get, those types of injuries from sticking your hand in with bigger players down by the basket, that's what I worry about for Herb, because he's not Draymond Green physically. You know what I mean? Draymond is built for that. Herb is not necessarily built for that. And he's had some little injuries here and there in the past. So, if this is going to work, Herb Jones has to be on the floor. He's been that since a rookie. He's always made the starting lineup better. So I think, there are players who are better than him, but there are none on this team who are more impactful.
Yeah, Herb is a monster out there. Like you said, the only wing, to get all defense. Like he's just a really, tough defender. He's just gonna make life hard. But what, Herb's obviously important. What about Trey Murphy? Because he's someone that everyone keeps saying when you talk about either, who's going to be most improved, breakout star, you always hear Trey Murphy. Everybody likes those jumbo wings and all that. So, Trey Murphy, like how do you feel about his potential impact? Obviously, he's out right now with the injury, but like his impact on his team, like how do you feel about his going forward?
Yeah, the other guy is Trey. Like when we talk about those lineups again, Herb and Trey are at the top of all those lists, and it's because Trey is so in the way the league operates now, the way the math of this league works. Trey does the things you want. He is highly efficient around the rim, and he can shoot the ball from up to 5 to 10 feet from beyond the 3-point line. And then he's gotten better as a ball handler and the ability to put the ball on the floor since his rookie year. So Trey is a threat at all three levels of the game, and you can't put. You look at the guys who got their extensions. There are players who got more money than Trey. Trey's extension averages about $28 million a year. So I think he's a bargain considering the deals
really
that
is, right?
other guys got.
Yeah, really
I mean, there are people getting $40 million who are not putting up the numbers that Trey has put up, especially as a starter. When Trey gets 12 shots, not 12 makes, just 12 shots, his team wins like 75% of the time. So it's just like his ability to shift the defense is unlike anybody else on the roster. And so that's why they need him back so much, because Brandon is adjusting his game and starting to move it back out and take more threes. We saw last night and take 5, which is a lot for him, has been the last couple of years. So, but Trey embraces this. They asked Trey earlier, in the offseason, how do you feel about Willie saying the team needs to get up more threes? He said, you ain't got to ask me to put up more threes.
Say less, right?
Yeah. Do that. Okay. And so I think he's one of those guys that in this NBA you have to have. You cannot survive without a guy who's a tall volume 3-point shooter who can get off his shot against anybody. I think if you talk about, you put him in Michael Porter Jr. spot in Denver. I'd rather have Trey than Michael Porter Jr.
1,000%. I'm with you on that.
You know what I'm saying? And Trey is a dog defensively. Trey is a dog defensively. He can block
UVA
shots,
guys. The UVA guys defend.
Come on, man. So, I think Trey's upside is so huge, and the whole league knows it. And the question is, how does he grow into his role with Brandon? And then how does he grow in that role if Brandon is moved?
Yeah, and that's one of my things I'm going to ask you next. What's the percentages you believe that Brandon Ingram will not be a member of the Pelicans by the deadline?
It's hard now because of the Dejounte injury. If Dejounte was healthy, I honestly, I would have said when December 15th hits and who's eligible to get moved now, who's able, then the conversation would be on. Like the Pelicans don't want to pay the tax. They have never paid the tax. They are in the tax right now. They've got to shed salary, and they don't have anybody on the bench to shed salary. Most of their guys are minimum salary players on that bench. So, the only targets you really have are CJ and Brandon. And I think that CJ's contract is shorter, and, keeping Brandon to the end of the year without a contract is still kind of iffy for them. So before Dejounte's injury, I would have said Brandon was probably gone by the deadline. Now, if Dejounte's not back till January, you know what I mean? Like, I think Brandon has If you're his agent, I'll just say it like that. If you're his agent, this couldn't have worked out better for you, because now
You're
Brandon
right.
has proved his value. The ball is going to be in his hands, and how he decides to use that power on the court is going to determine what his value is, both with the Pelicans and with this league. Because I think it's not just the Pelicans; it's the NBA that's soured on Brandon, starting with his Team USA experience. It's just there's been a slow erosion of belief that he's going to be more than a second banana. And and by that, I mean probably on a team that's not a championship team. Because if we look at the top 8 teams in the league, where would Brandon Ingram fit? If you look at the top 16 teams in the East and the West, where would Brandon Ingram fit? And that's a hard place to be when you're asking people for $40 million a year.
Yeah, and then he's in a right. He can score at a high level, at a high clip, but it's like, all right, do we give this guy $45-50 million? Is he that level? Is he that top tier? And I don't think he is that, but he's still a 23, 24, 25 point per game guy. So those guys are still valuable, but it's just like you said, the trade value is just not there. But like you said, this might be a blessing in disguise for him. I mean, and then he had a good start yesterday with 35 points, whatever he had yesterday. Really, it was efficient. So this could benefit him. It sucks for you guys. It sucks for the Pelicans as a team that Dejounte's out, and especially with all the other injuries. But for him, like you said, for his pockets, this could potentially be beneficial for him. So,
and I said, for Brandon, it's the best thing possible. Like, I mean, if he plays well, the team is going to win. If you know what I mean, like if he plays well and the team is winning games, then maybe he can come back to New Orleans if he wants to stay here, and he can say, "Look, okay, I may not get $45 million, but I'm gonna get some guarantees out this joint." You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna get the deal that I want, and I'm gonna get some things from this organization. It's just, can he adapt? I think the question has never been for Brandon what he is capable of on the court. It's what he's willing to do.
Yeah,
that's the question. His talent is not a question. It's, are you going to fit in? And at the stage of his career, we talk about these guys. This is year 10 for Brandon. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is where
crazy,
we are with this.
He's doing like 26, 27, right?
Like, yeah, he's going to year 9, not 10, but 9. And you're like, yo, I mean, around the way the league goes, your reputation is cemented as to what type of player you are. And teams start looking at that. And if they don't think that you're going to change and evolve as you get older, and I mean, you got to start taking that Paul George mentality. Okay, I'm going to stay out here and shoot these threes. I'm going to take fewer shots, but I got to make those shots count. And I think Brandon can't be a 20-shot attempt guy anymore. He's got to figure out how to get it done with 14, 15 attempts.
And like I said, that's one of the toughest things for guys who have been valued shooters is, as they get older and now the criticism becomes more louder, how do I adapt? And that's when we've seen it from guys. It's hard to adapt. And I always said this, like, even from the high school rank to go to high school to college, like that's a tough, you go from being the guy 20, 25 shots, and now you got to take 6, and you just got to play within the scheme. And some guys don't adapt. You see the top players in the country, they don't adapt well, and then they fall, and then you don't hear about them for years, or they're a second round pick, and this wasn't the number 1 player in the country, Monty Bates, like that's the situation like that. It's all about how do you adapt. And as he gets older, and now his money, this money could be affected, we're gonna see. So it's gonna be a crucial stretch. All right, one more thing before I let you go. I appreciate you, David, for being on the podcast. David Grubb on the podcast, talking Pelicans. Let's say like Zion's healthy, Dejounte comes back in January, he's healthy, Trey Murphy's healthy, Ingram's still there. What's the best case scenario for the Pelicans in the West?
The absolute best case for them is I think they earn a 5 or a 6 seed. I don't think that they're good enough yet to be in the top 4. But I think a 5 or a 6 seed would be the absolute best case. That means you're not in the play-in. And the play-in has basically been the New Orleans Pelicans Invitational for 3 years. Yeah, they're the only team that's been in all the play-ins. The Pelicans are the only team that's been in all of the play-ins. Like This is just crazy to me. So, that's number one. And then, the second thing in the best case scenario would be winning a playoff series, because that's something this team has not done since 2017. So those would be your best case. I think your worst case absolutely is this team does not make the playoffs at all, and you are injured all year, and you have not answered your questions about this franchise, and you're forced into a rebuild without knowing what you really want to do.
Yeah. That word rebuild is scary. And you mentioned something before we used to be used to 5-year builds, right? Everything is all right. We got 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years to build this thing. Not anymore. It is now. Like my team, the Knicks, like it felt like we were in a rebuild, and then it was like no, we gotta win now.
All
we gotta
the chips in.
We're all in. Like we got all these picks. That's it. We're going. Even if the cat thing don't work, we had to go all in with this. We had to see if this, because how we were constructed was not going to. We were capped out second round team. We have to see if this works, and if it doesn't, we're gonna get fired anyway. So who cares? We don't care, right? We don't care what happens in the future. We worried about right now. And that's the thing.
It's 51 years. It's been 51 years. You got to go for it, right? Like,
Dave, it's been a long
2 finals appearances in 51 years.
The last time they went to the finals, I was only 9 years old, and Tim Duncan and them gave us the business. So and that's the only team I have not seen with a championship. All my teams have seen, but that's the one I'm waiting. But NBA teams nowadays are not about these 5-year reap. It is about we got 2-3 year span. If we can't figure it out in that span, man, we got to restart again. Because those days are long gone. They're just not gonna happen. And that's something that if things go south for you guys, you might have to entertain that. And then it's scary. That is scary. And that's what I worry about with my Knicks. Because I'm like, what if things don't go right? We just traded a lot of picks to get Mikal Bridges. We gave what if this doesn't go right? Like,
and you had to give away another pick in the DiVincenzo deal. Gave away a first round today, even though it's Detroit's pick, but still, that's Detroit's pick.
I'm like, okay, so I'm trying not to stress out with that. And but quick, how do you feel about that trade with Cat? I know you're not. I'm not a huge Cat guy. I don't know if you're a huge Cat guy, but I wasn't.
I'm not.
I'm trying to be positive about it, but I wasn't too crazy about it. And I predicted they would get him last year, and I just I don't know.
I'm gonna just say this. Do you think they missed DiVincenzo on opening night?
Oh, dude, that's
the one shot
thing.
Making
And toughness. We don't have no tough guys. No tough guy. New York. There's always at least one tough guy you need on that on a team. We don't have
DiVincenzo might have been the thuggiest dude on the squad.
Yeah. Exactly, man. That's low key. I know it's a position where you're like, oh, we could find a shooter, but I'm like, there's something about Dante that he just got that.
Look, I'm a Michigan guy. I was born in Detroit, and I love the University of Michigan. So DiVincenzo been haunting me since he played beat the Wolverines in the championship game.
Yep.
And just came off the bench and was lighting up everything. You cannot cultivate big shot makers. They either exist or they don't. You know what I'm saying?
Big shots in Philly. In the Philly series, big shots. You saw that game, game 2?
So when you have them, I think it's hard to let one go. And I've never seen Cat is a very talented dude, but I've never seen him impose his will on a basketball game. And I saw Dante do that as a reserve.
Mm-hmm.
This is my game now. I'm gonna do this. I'm taking these shots. These are my shots. When nobody else is willing to take them, I'm taking them. I'm taking them.
Yeah, 100%. I'm trying not to overreact off of one game. I'm trying not. But I'm a New Yorker, man.
Hey, Mitchell Robinson, I'll tell you what, that dude, I know he was scared when they brought in Cat because I think he was figuring, okay, they got rid of Hartenstein. This is my job now. You can't take this away from me.
Yeah.
You bring in Cat, and he's like, oh, they don't want me no more. Look,
we
need
him back.
The big man. The big man. Look, rest up. Get yourself right. And then in January, when he shows up, there's gonna be minutes. Don't worry, big man. There's minutes.
David, we need him. Yesterday, I know it's just one game, but I was like, oh man, because just the little things, just picking up guys on ball screen. It's just like, oh, okay, we need him back. We need to. I know it's Boston, they're a juggernaut, but we need him back. But David, my brother, this was a pleasure, man. I really, really happy to finally get you on the pod, man. It was fun talking to you.
Yes, sir. We definitely have to do this again.
For sure, for sure. Let the people know where they could find you and any projects you got coming up.
Yeah, check out again thebirdwrites.com and the Bird Calls podcast, both covering the New Orleans Pelicans, and my other podcast, Hard in the Paint with David Grubb's more interviews about topics around the world of sports. You can check it on YouTube on the Hard in the Paint Sports channel, and get them wherever your podcasts are downloaded. So make sure you do. I think there's a lot of great content there.
All right, definitely. We'll have all that below in the description. Appreciate you again for coming on the pod. You can follow me at Off the Ball Pod on X, Instagram, Facebook. Make sure to follow subscribe to the YouTube channel, Off the Ball Network, and all that good stuff. But on that note, be well, be safe, take care. Peace out, guys.